I've been involved in short-term rentals since 2007, which is before Airbnb even existed. I've dealt with over 100,000 guests and had well over 100 properties on my books. We've won multiple awards, I've written an Amazon #1 best-selling book, and now I'm incredibly grateful to have built a business and a team that allows me to only work a few hours per month, so I get to spend my time doing whatever I want, which is either spending time with the kids or making content for you. In this video, I'm going to give you everything. All the experience I've gained over these 17 years so you can get to where I am quicker. I've developed a 5-step framework that encapsulates everything that you need to know to build a profitable and amazing Airbnb business. So get a wee cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is that this video is not just going to be talking about how amazing Airbnb is and how everything's wonderful. There are some serious dark times and things that you need to watch out for. So I'm going to talk about that as well. This is also not a get-rich-quick scheme. I'm not going to give you some formula and a claim that it's going to make you £1 million overnight. There's hard work involved. I'm not a guru promising you some snake oil. I've literally been in the trenches, I've built this business, and I want to show you how to do it too. Airbnb is an amazing business to run when it's set up correctly. It turbocharges a property's financial potential, and it means you can earn money while you're sitting on a beach or on a lilo, and the money and the bookings are still coming in. Now, the possibilities from Airbnb are unbelievable. Once you start renting per night instead of per month, the income that you can generate from one property is phenomenal. One weekend booking in your Airbnb can be higher than an entire month's rent in that same property, and you got 4 weekends per month. With one property, you could earn enough to replace your income from work. And if you like your job, well, after that 1 year, if you just banked all that Airbnb income, well, buy a second property. But be under no illusions. This is not passive income. This is not even really a property strategy. This is a hospitality business that takes a lot of work, especially at the start, to get it set up right. Let's start with some common misconceptions around Airbnb. And the first is people calling it Airbnb. Now, if you know me or you watch this channel, you know I hate the term Airbnb, but there's so many other ones out there. Short-term rentals, serviced accommodation, vacation rentals, holiday lets. They're all very big and I struggle to get them into a YouTube title. Plus, whenever you use most of them to sort of ordinary lay people, they don't have a clue what you're talking about, but as soon as you mention Airbnb, people know what you're talking about. But in reality, it's just one platform that you put your property on, and it's just like any of the others. In fact, the others are probably much better than it. There are dozens of other OTAs, online travel agents. Airbnb is one of them, but there are plenty of others out there. Misconception number 2 is that any old property will work as an Airbnb. Now, while Airbnb can work in multiple random weird places all over the world, it's not the case that you can just put any old property in any location on there and make money. You're going to learn through this video that paying guests have certain expectations. So if a property is in an undesirable, unsafe location, why would anyone want to come and stay there? Now, yes, you as the host will be able to pick up that property nice and cheap. There's a reason why it's cheap. Misconception number 3 is that it's easy to make money from Airbnb. As I said, this is not passive income. You see all these gurus and people selling courses telling you about how easy it is. But the reality is, this is a hospitality business. Picture yourself working in a hotel or in a restaurant, and you've just got a steady stream of paying customers that have high expectations coming through. You've got every job in that hotel. Now, these things can be systemized, and we're going to come to that in a second, but at the start, it's just you doing everything. And the last misconception, again, if you watch this channel, you know I hate it, is people talking about occupancy, like success is having high occupancy. In reality, it's not. What you need to focus on is profit, not occupancy. So what do I mean by that? Well, you could have 30 one-night stays in your property, and you'll have 100% occupancy over a month. But in reality, the changeover costs of all those stays, the work involved in dealing with all those guests, actually means that property is not profitable. And on the flip side, you could have 7 3-night stays in that property, so you've left 9 days empty, but the profit on those stays is going to be far higher because it's far less changeovers, far less work involved in dealing with all those guests, and it's just going to be a nicer business to run. If you have a property already, happy days, although maybe you're wanting to add a few more in there. If you don't have a property, here's the 3 ways that you can get one. The first is just go and buy one. Like, you've got the money, just go buy one. But if you don't have the money, then you've got 2 options left. First one, Airbnb arbitrage or rent to SA in the UK, and that's when you find a property that's for rent, contact the owner, you explain what you want to do with it, you pay them the rent, and then you put it on Airbnb. Now, this method is very popular with the gurus. They sell courses on how to do it, and they get scripts and everything of how to talk to property owners, but in reality, it can be very hard and problematic. First of all, hard to even get a property, because when you're speaking to the owner and you're telling them you want to run it as an Airbnb and make all this money, but you're only going to pay them a little bit, then the owner can get a bit peeved off and think, well, why would I give that to you? I could just do it myself. But in reality, it is actually a very good deal for the owner. They're getting the rent that they were looking for. They know you're going to be in professionally cleaning the place 2 or 3 times a week. You're going to be staying on top of any maintenance issues. You're probably going to have to spend a few grand sprucing the place up to get it ready for Airbnb. So it is a good deal, almost too good a deal, because guess what? In periods of low demand, you got to pay that rent. If a guest wrecks the place, you still got to pay that rent. Any money you spend on the place stays with the owner because it's their property. And the third way, the way that I've built my business, is by co-hosting, you call in the US, or by managing other people's properties for them. So in this method, us, the host, works on behalf of the property owner. So all the bookings, all the money that's generated is the property owners, and then we invoice them and take a commission, and that's what we earn. Now this means that the risk between us and the owner is much more spread. So in the periods of low demand, the owner doesn't get paid much, but we don't earn much either. We don't have any fixed liability to them. But in periods of high demand, it's a win-win situation as well. It's a lean model because all the running costs are charged back to the property owner as well, whereas in the rent SA or the arbitrage, all the running costs are ours and they add up. And I've seen people who take on rents of properties to run as Airbnbs, and actually at the end of the month, they're losing money. So there are different ways to source properties. If you've got the money, buying one is definitely the best way forward. You're gonna have full control, you're gonna have lower liability of costs every month. It's just the best way. But if you wanna get started now with not much money, think of those other two options. So now we're coming on to my 5-step framework. I call it 5 fundamentals, 5-star fundamentals. And we're starting with number 1. And the number 1 most important thing in your Airbnb is property. Now you might think that's obvious, but it seriously does shock me how many properties I see online that are just not fit for Airbnb. This is a business and your property is the product you're selling. And without a good product, any business is doomed to fail. If your property is highly desirable, then that gets reflected in your rates, which go super high. Your reviews come in 5 stars all over the place, and it's just an amazing business to run. But likewise, if you bring a poor quality property to the market, well then no one's really going to want to stay in it. So you're going to have to make it cheap. People are going to come and leave negative reviews from bad experiences, and it's just going to be a horrible business to be in. A good property is your business's greatest asset. It's working 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It's popping up in search results multiple times a day of people who want to come and stay in your area. They want to see that. They want to book your place. So now, the single most important factor to think about when you're getting a property, the number 1 thing that you need to decide on is the location. Now think about it. This is the only thing that can't be changed once you've made the decision. And when you're choosing a property and a location, it's important that you put yourself in the guest's shoes. Think like a guest. They don't know where the good streets and bad streets in your town are. Yes, they can see a map on Airbnb, but they don't know if it's a good area or not. Think about the first impressions when they're arriving at the property. How are they going to feel? Think about the first morning when they wake up. What are they going to do? Because it's not just the inside of the property that makes or breaks this business. It's the outside as well. It's what is nearby. What can they do? Guests want to be close to the action, coffee shops, parks, stuff like that, stuff that they actually come to see and they want to be doing whenever they're in your place. And it's crazy to think that if you have a nice coffee shop next door, you're going to get 5-star reviews on Airbnb because of that coffee shop. Likewise, it works the other way. If you have loads of graffiti or just unpleasant things nearby your property, that's going to get mentioned in the reviews as well. But there are ways to research whether a location is good or not. You can use a tool like AirDNA where you can zoom right in on a location, you can see all the nightly rates, everything, you can see the other properties in the area, or you can go a bit more thorough and you can do your own research. So look on the Airbnb platform yourself, dive into the street or the building, just see who else is there, who's operating. Next step is to go into those calendars on those listings, see how busy those properties are. If they're fully booked, that's a good sign. If there's gaps everywhere across multiple ones, it's not really a good sign. Step 3 is to look at the rates that these places are charging. Are you going to be happy with those rates? Because if your place is coming on the same size and quality as that, those are the rates you're probably going to get to. And it really is the case that if a place is in a bad location, those rates are going to be low. If it's in a really highly desirable sought after location, those rates are going to be sky high. Step 4 is to read the reviews of all those listings. What are the guests who have come and stayed in those places? How has their experience been? What are they saying? Because literally this is what guests will be saying about your property if you bring it to the market in that location. Now if you follow these steps and everything seems great, then happy days. But the next thing you need to do is look at the photos of all those properties and make sure yours is going to be even better than that. Remember, these places are already established. They've got reviews, they've got bookings. You need to come in, disrupt, take all those guests from them. So next up, when we're talking about a property, we need to decide what type of property are we going to get. Now you can rent out rooms, you can get 1-bedroom apartment, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can do apartments or houses. Now unfortunately I have no experience of houseboats, tree houses, glamping pods, any of that stuff. I'm a city slicker here, but the fundamentals are the same. Now if you haven't even given any thought to doing renting out rooms, well then hear me out. So I have a property in Belfast. It's a 7-bedroom guest house. We rent out each of those 7 bedrooms individually. People just get a room and a shared kitchen. That property does over £160,000 per year. It's insane the market that exists of people who are traveling and only need a room, somewhere to put their head down and get out and do whatever they're doing during the day. But next up, we're going to discuss apartments versus houses. Now you might think a 2-bedroom house and 2-bedroom apartment are going to be pretty much the same, and they probably will be the same in terms of revenue generation, but the costs are going to be very different. A 2-bedroom house is going to be bigger than an apartment. It's going to take longer to clean, be more expensive. You're going to have front and back yards. Even to just finish the place is going to take longer. You're going to have more paint to put on the walls, more carpet to put on the floors. Who takes the bins out? In an apartment, there's communal things that make things cheaper and just easier to run. So if you were to push me, I would always say an apartment is better than a house, at least in Belfast. Now, when you've got the property, you've got to spend quite a lot of money getting it ready, getting it up to Airbnb standard. You've got to fully fit out a kitchen with everything that a guest is going to need, all the kitchen items. You've got to set up your heating controls so they're going to be easy for a guest to use. You've got to make sure there's enough seating for everyone to sit on whenever they're in your place. Bathrooms is a key thing to think about as well. A ratio of about 4 or 5 people to 1 bathroom is probably best practice. There's no point squeezing 10 people into a property if you've only got 1 bathroom. You need to have storage in the property, not just for guests to put their clothes and stuff up and put their suitcase away, but also for you to keep all your cleaning stuff, all your toilet rolls, all those bits and pieces, linen that you need so that you can service the property after everyone's left. Try and make sure there's enough sockets in the property for all the guests to charge their phone at the same time. If you can get parking, that's a massive bonus. But one of, if not the biggest consideration when you're getting your property ready is to make sure you have strong, super fast Wi-Fi. I think this is honestly more important than having running water or heating. If that Wi-Fi goes down, you are in big trouble. Now, when you're decorating or furnishing a property, think of it like a hotel room. Have a plan, have a scheme, have something designed by a professional if you can to just make the property highly desirable. Guests are paying customers and they expect a lot. Don't just stuff a property with a load of cheap shit that you can find online. Bathrooms and kitchens are the most expensive rooms for you to try and renovate and refurb, but they're going to have the biggest impact if you do. Getting a property ready can take time, and when you're starting with no money, you might think it's easiest and best to just do it all yourself, but I would say time is money. Be very careful about how long it's going to take and how much money you think you're going to save, because you're missing out on a massive opportunity cost. Every week that passes by because you're doing the painting yourself or putting the flooring down is another week that you're losing money from not having guests in-house. I learned this the hard way. People I coach go through this as well, and the chances are you might be wanting to do it as well. But really, the investment that you're getting in and getting a painter and getting someone to build your flat pack furniture is an investment that's going to return whenever you start getting paying guests through the door. Now we're on the fundamental 2 next, which is promotion. So once you got that property and it's looking kick-ass, now it's time to start getting bookings in. And this is when all the hard work that you've done in getting it ready pays off. You've now got a fantastic product, and like any business, you need to market it to get sales. It's important to get this property across everywhere you can on the internet, and every nook and cranny you can find. Booking sites, social media, newsletters, blogs, all over the place. The internet is a very big place, and you need to get a lot of eyeballs on your property to get those bookings. It's important to remember that bookings are the lifeblood of this business. You're always looking for your next one. In normal property investing, you might only need to get tenants in once or twice a year, but with Airbnb, you need to sell that property day after day, week after week. And luckily, there are lots of booking sites out there who want to help fill your property with their guests. For a fee, of course. I touched on this earlier, but it is not all about Airbnb. This is just one platform of many. Airbnb is the biggest and most well-known booking site, and of course you need to put your property on there. On Airbnb, guests get reviewed by you as hosts, as well as you and your property getting reviewed by the guests. You can see a guest's profile photo once you've accepted a booking, and Airbnb also offer air cover insurance, which I don't think is that good, but it's a thing. It's super easy and quick to get listed on Airbnb, and there's some interesting functionality on that system as well. You don't have to set up instant book, which is where bookings just come into your calendar. You can set it up to be inquiry based, so people message you and say,
"Oh, I'd like to come and book and stay in your place, is that okay?"
And you can have a wee look and say yes or no. And this is why people, especially first time new hosts, like it, because there's some sort of protection there. They don't just have to let in whoever books. You can also set it up to only accept bookings from people who have a verified ID or who have past positive reviews. So they do try and make it really safe for new hosts. But the downsides are, because it's so user friendly and because they aim at all these new hosts, it's absolutely flooded. It's so saturated, and even in your area there's going to be tons of people already doing it, so it can be hard to get noticed. Another downside is because that it's so user friendly and easy to use, the functionality of it is actually quite restrictive. We're going to come on to other things later on, but the other booking sites offer a lot more functionality than Airbnb. The only way you can get paid is when a guest pays Airbnb, and then after their stay then they pay out to you. But if there's any problems, Airbnb has got your money and that they can withdraw it, refund bits of it to those guests if they kick up. They're also extremely protective of their guests, and they anonymize all communication methods so that it's super hard to actually get speaking to a guest directly. Airbnb want it all done through their platform. Next up, we're talking about Booking.com, which is where we get the vast majority of our bookings from. Now, this platform is an absolute beast. For many people, they just don't use Airbnb, and Booking.com is their go-to, tried and trusted method of booking their accommodation. You absolutely have to list your property on here. If you do, your property is going to show up in search results alongside hotels, and if it's good enough, you could sway people away from the hotel onto your property. There are far fewer Airbnb competitors on Booking.com compared to Airbnb. In Belfast alone, there are over 2/3 fewer properties to book on Booking.com than on Airbnb. So this presents a much greater opportunity to be seen and get booked. And the functionality around Booking.com is just insane. Because it was built for hotels, professional hospitality businesses, the functionality is amazing. You can do all sorts of things that you just can't do on Airbnb. So payment methods, policies, cancellations, discounts, everything. You can do so much stuff on this website, but there are downsides as well. So whilst on Airbnb you can set up inquiries and turn off instant book, on Booking.com, put your big boy pants on. It's only instant book. And this scares a lot of people off. Also, because of all the functionality, it can get a bit overwhelming, a bit confusing of how to use it. And because Booking.com don't verify the guests or the bookers who use their platform, you get access to a very shady underworld of horrible people who use it. And we're going to come to that later in Fundamental 5, which is protection. The other big OTA that you need to get on is Expedia. It's an umbrella group that has, dozens of other little online travel agents underneath it. If you go on Expedia, you automatically populate into those other sites. So hotels.com, What If, Travelocity, Cheap Tickets, Orbitz, Trivago, Ryanair Rooms, and more. It costs the same as Booking.com, 15%, and has much of the same flexibility and functionality. But like every booking site, there are downsides to it as well. It's nearly impossible to get to speak to someone at Expedia, and when you have one listing that's then populated into all the other different booking sites, errors can occur. We once had a property that the pin on the map was wrong by 5 miles. So it's not perfect, but it's still worth being on. Now, we're going to talk more about this later, but being on all those different booking sites is a recipe for disaster if you're not using something to manage them and make sure you don't get double bookings. And that's where Channel Manager comes in. This is a one-stop shop, one platform that links up to all the booking sites that you're on, and you can control everything from that one place. So you can do payments through there. It stops double bookings. It can help you build an own website or a booking engine where you can get direct bookings. And once you get started, you'll very quickly realize that direct bookings are like the holy grail in this industry. Now, it's tempting to think that the OTAs have our best interests as hosts, but in reality, they just want bookings to come and stay in your property so that they get their commission. They have no loyalty to us as hosts. They just want to keep selling our properties to get their commission from their guests. The OTA's list of priorities is themselves first, guests second, and us last. If there's ever an issue with a booking, first, they're going to make sure that they get paid. Second, they're going to keep the guests happy, so they'll generally always side with guests because they want those guests to keep booking through their platform. Us hosts are expendable. There's always more people coming behind us to fill their platform. Now, it's a super frustrating experience to watch a guest play the system with Airbnb or Booking or anyone else, and for Booking on those platforms to fall on the side of the guests. And it happens all the time. Relying heavily on the OTAs as well means that you're locked in to paying 15 or more % commission to them for every booking. On top of that, they exert serious control over your guests and who you let into your property. And I just don't like that. Trying to reject or cancel bookings that have come through an OTA can get you punished by those OTAs because their guests are going to have an unpleasant experience. Even if you figured out that they're coming to have a massive party in your place, and they're probably going to trash it. So by having direct bookings, it gives you far greater control, as well as earning more money. So with that in mind, here's 5 ways to get more direct bookings. The first one is you need to have your own website, or at least a booking engine that bookings can come in on. It's not the case of just having someone email you and you go back and forth. You need something to be live when someone's a motivated buyer that they can go on, see availability, see the price, and just book it. Next, you can offer a discounted rate if a guest wants to book direct with you. So if you're paying 15% commission to Booking.com, if you offer a guest 5 or 10% discount on the Booking.com price, then all of a sudden you seem far more attractive option. You're saving a cut, the guest is saving a cut, and Booking.com don't get anything. Next up, you can remarket to past guests. So once a guest's already stayed in your place, you should be able to have got their email, should hopefully have been able to contact them via phone or something like that. And you can market to them, tell them about discounts, tell them if they come direct, they're going to save money as well. So that's a really tidy way, especially in a city where you get a lot of frequent repeat travel, to save and get those bookings. Next up is utilizing social media. The internet's a big place. People often don't just go straight on to Booking.com or Airbnb to book their accommodation. A lot of places and people go on to Facebook groups and they ask, where's a good place to stay. And that's when you can be on there. You can have a profile for your property. You can be answering in those Facebook groups and driving people to your own direct website. And lastly, there's a very cheeky way to do it, which Booking.com and all the other OTAs would absolutely hate me to tell you. But when a booking comes in, you can tell people that if they cancel through that OTA and book with you direct, they will get a discount. Now, it's not ideal because it's going to push your cancellation rate high, which is going to sort of impact your search results. But if you just want to maximize getting that money in the bank, then that is a good way to do it. Next up, when we're talking about promotion, is the importance of high quality professional photos. Now, I have to be honest, if you're taking photos of your property on your phone or your mate's fancy camera, well then I have to say, this is not going to cut it. Your property might look amazing in real life, but if you can't capture that in amazing high quality photos, then it's all for nothing. Guests are just going to scroll on by. With amazing photos, your property's going to stand out, get booked first, and even make sure that you can get the highest nightly rates. Having professional photos even subtly conveys to guests that you're a professional host. Having cheap ass photos that you took on your phone, guests are going to be thinking, what else is this host scrimped on? And the main reason people don't get professional photos taken is the cost, because they think about it as a cost. In reality, you need to think about it as an investment. These photos are going to be viewed by hundreds of thousands of people over the course of their lifetime. Like, what is the cost per view on that? It's insane. Properties with professional photos can expect to get an increase of about 20% in revenue. And by having these professional photos, you're just going to be able to have so much more pride in your property. You're going to showcase it all over social media, in your blogs, on your website. It's just a better way to be. Next up is fundamental 3, and that is people. Have you figured out that they all start with P yet? Now, once you've got your property ready and you've got it on the booking sites, things are going to get crazy. Bookings are going to come flying in. All the OTAs give new properties a little bump up. They want to get the bookings through, to get the reviews. So you better be ready, because those bookings are coming. But you also have to remember that these are not just bookings. These are real people who are coming to stay. And like in any hospitality business, you're going to have to work damn hard to keep those customers happy so that you can get those 5-star reviews. Because remember, this is a review-driven industry. Think about it. Would you go stay in a hotel that had terrible reviews? Would you eat in a restaurant that had terrible reviews? And with Airbnb, you're actually in a much more competitive marketplace than restaurants. So remember this, revenue follows reviews. Because your reward for delivering amazing customer service and getting those 5-star reviews means you can charge higher nightly rates, which means you get better guests coming to stay, and that means you get less competition. But the opposite is also true. If you deliver bad customer service or don't really take as much care with your guests as you should, you're going to get bad reviews. When you get bad reviews, you're going to have to lower your nightly rates. And when you lower your nightly rates, you're going to attract bad guests and the guests who don't care about anything other than price. And then ultimately that's just a race to the bottom, because you're then going to have to compete with all the other properties in your area, and they're going to see that you've dropped your prices even lower, so they're going to drop theirs. It's a horrible place to be in. It's a much more enjoyable business when you're offering a fantastic product, fantastic customer service, you're charging the highest nightly rates, and your calendar's full. If you're coming from a traditional property investing background, the mindset shift from tenants to tourists can be a hard one. And one of the biggest things to consider on this is speed at which things are done. In traditional tenants, if a washing machine breaks down, it might be alright to just leave that a week while you try and find another second-hand one. But in Airbnb, if a guest reports a problem, they expect a resolution instantly. If properties start to get grubby or tired, that might be okay in traditional buy-to-let. But in Airbnb, if your property doesn't look as good as it does in the photos, those professional ones, then you're going to get negative reviews as well. Now, one of the best ways to get 5-star reviews is to meet and greet guests when they arrive. Taking the time to build that rapport, for them to actually see that you're a real person instead of just someone on the other end of the Airbnb app, is a great way to build that relationship and get those 5-star reviews. Maybe your guests have been traveling for hours, they're in unfamiliar territory, they don't really know where they're going, they maybe got lost. And by you being there to greet them when they arrive, it just helps them to switch off and get into holiday mode. You can show them where to park, you can help them bring their luggage in, you can go through the property and show them how all the weird and wonderful things work. And it's just building that connection, building that rapport. You can give them a tour, you can give them local recommendations, you can answer any questions that they have. And it's just, even a 15-minute conversation is just an incredibly powerful way to build that connection. But meet and greet is not always possible. And in fact, we don't meet and greet any of our guests anymore. It's just too time consuming. Guests' plans change and it's a massive time drain. It's just not really doable at scale. But if you're just starting out, that is the best way to get 5-star reviews. And then once guests are in-house, you're going to get a ton more communication with them that you're going to need to respond to very quickly. You're going to get a lot of FAQs, frequently annoying questions coming your way. I'm going to put them on screen here so you can see for yourself, but these are going to come thick and fast, weird questions, things that are so obvious to you as the host, but a guest traveling in a new city or a new country, a new culture, and a new property are not obvious to them. But you got to suck it up and answer every one of them professionally, friendly, to get that 5-star review. How you treat your guests and how they experience your property is what's going to end up in a review. So now as we end fundamental 3, you've got a firm grasp grasp of the front end of your business. You've got the property, you're showcasing it, and you're getting guests through the door. Now we need to talk about the back end, what's going on underneath the hood. So fundamental 4 is processes. It's about the systems that you need to implement to run this business smoothly. There are so many things that you need to think about when you're running an Airbnb, so please do not underestimate how important this fundamental is. Systems are what is going to give you the business that you actually want. Without systems and without leveraging other people and technology, you're going to end up overworked, burnt out, stressed, and just hate the business. Your holidays, family events, date nights are all gonna get interrupted by the business. Your family's gonna start to say to you, this business is horrible, is it even worth it? And you'll be working so many hours in the business that if you actually calculated your hourly rate, you'd find out you'd be better off working at McDonald's. Now, I know this because I've been there, and I think anyone who's been in Airbnb for long enough will be able to relate to this. And it can creep up slowly, but before you know it, you're gonna have anxiety about checking your phone and your emails in the morning. You're gonna be thinking you can feel it buzzing in your pocket even when it's not. And even if it does, you're gonna have an absolute dread of who's ringing me and why. So by developing efficient and repeatable systems, it enables you to work on the business instead of in it. And the key to that is leverage. So many people don't dedicate enough time to developing systems because they say they don't have time to develop the systems because they're so busy. Abraham Lincoln said, give me 6 hours to chop down a tree and I'll spend the first 4 hours sharpening the axe. Now this is so powerful for several reasons. Firstly, it shows the need for leverage to achieve this goal. You can't just push a tree down. You need tools to help you. And in Airbnb, this is technology and people. And secondly, the axe has to be sharp to be effective. Many people just spend 6 hours whacking away at that tree with a blunt axe, getting burnt out, and that's what Airbnb can turn into if you don't have effective systems. And thirdly, you need to intentionally dedicate time to sharpen the axe. It's not going to sharpen itself. So when you're running an Airbnb business, you need to stop, give yourself time, focus on systems, and implement them into your business so that you get that time back. So what do you need to systemize? The first thing that you absolutely need to get off your plate is the cleaning or housekeeping. This is without doubt the first job you need to get off your plate and onto someone else's. Now you might think when you're getting started that you'll just do the cleaning yourself. You're thinking, well, it's easy. Why would I pay someone else to do it? But the reality is that it takes up your time at the expense of more vital tasks that only you could do. Almost anyone can clean your property if you pay them, but not everyone can do those higher value tasks of setting your rates or delivering the customer service that a guest needs. On top of that, cleaning your property ties you geographically to it. So there's no earning money while you're on a beach if you got to clean that property every time a guest leaves. You also don't choose when you get to do it. So, yes, it only takes a few hours, but you don't get to choose when those hours are. So it's always going to be Sunday morning. So kiss goodbye to your lions at the weekend. And you're probably never going to get past one property because you're going to be very busy cleaning one. The thought of adding another one in there where you're going to have 2 checkouts on the same day and 2 check-ins, it's just not feasible for one person to do. So you need to leverage that out. That's the first thing you need to do. Who are you going to get it to? Well, if you've got a family member who's interested in doing it for a few quid, definitely use them. That's how I got started. Next, you could use a cleaning agency where you have one port of call. You tell them the cleaning schedule for the week and then they send cleaners to your property. And this seems good because you're not having to communicate with multiple different cleaners, but it's not perfect. We've been through this situation a couple of times now to the point where I'm never ever going to use an agency again. Firstly, they're probably going to be sending different cleaners to your property every time. So you're not going to have someone who has got skilled enough to be efficient to know all the little nooks and crannies that require a bit extra work. Secondly, it's a common occurrence that agency cleaners just don't show up for their work. They just quit and go work for someone else. You often won't find that out until after you think the clean has been done and you go to meet the guests and you realize, oh, no one has arrived here at all. Thirdly, it's a more expensive option. The cleaner is probably going to be getting paid minimum wage, but then the cleaning agency has to add on a margin on top of that for them. So it's the most expensive option. And this is frustrating for you if you're paying high prices and you're getting different cleaners showing up every time or just not showing up at all. And lastly, if your relationship with the agency ever sours or ends abruptly, well then you are in the shit straight away. Now this happened, as I say, to me twice. Once when we had about 10 apartments and the second when we had 20 apartments. The cleaning agency just said, we're done. Now, the thought of having 20 cleans at the weekend and no one to clean them is absolutely terrifying. So by using an individual cleaner or cleaners, it's a much better way because you have full control, you can trust them, they're going to get to know your place, you can pay them well, they're going to be your eyes and ears on the ground. Now I'm not going to lie, the cleaning is probably the biggest headache that remains in this business. No matter how much you systemize it, cleaning and the cleaners are very difficult to get right. Next up is laundry, so that's your bed linen and your towels. Now there's a spectrum here as well. So on one end of it, you can wash, iron your towels and bed linen yourself, and at the other end you can just hire it from a professional hotel quality linen company. And in the middle you can get a laundrette and hopefully someone will be able to deliver that linen to and from it. But again, you want to be outsourcing this as much as possible. In my company, we hire it from linen company, they drop off, clean and iron, take away the dirty stuff. It's very easy. Yes, you pay a bit more for it, but we're investing in that, we're getting our time back. Guests expect Hotel quality beds with white starched linen. They don't want stuff that you've had through the washing machine 100 times. It's like see-through. The next thing to outsource is your maintenance. Now, if you're anything like me, when stuff goes wrong at the start, I used to arrive, tool bag in hand, I'll fix the problem, and then realised I have absolutely no idea about DIY, and I ended up often making the problem worse, which was actually super embarrassing because the guests are literally standing behind you, looking over your shoulder thinking, what is this guy doing? Stuff goes wrong in your properties on a frequent basis. It seems like on a daily basis. So it's important to have a team of people who can come and help out: electrician, plumber, gas, painter, all these things, so that when either a cleaner notices it or a guest reports it, that you can get it fixed quickly. Now, I touched on it already, but I want to go back and go deeper into the importance of a channel manager. This is one of the biggest time savers you're going to get. You change things once on your channel manager and it automatically pushes out all those changes to every OTA. So that's new photos, professional ones. That's if you're changing your rates, pushes it out, all this stuff. No double bookings. You can communicate through it as well. You can take your payments through it. It just saves you even having to go in and out of each OTA. It's just such a pain. Now, there are loads of channel managers out there. We personally use Vivo. Would I recommend it? Probably not. Probably would recommend Guesty, and if we were starting again, that's what I would be using. But there are lots out there, and they're like cars. Everyone's got their own personal preference. They all do pretty much the same thing. Okay, next up I want to talk about rates. Now, I hope this is not stating the obvious, but it's important that your rates are not just the same across the week. They need to be dynamic and adjust up and down based on a variety of different factors. You do need to decide on a base rate, which you can do whenever you were back at the start, you were doing your research, find those comparable properties in your area, see what they're charging, compare your property against theirs. So it's not just about being the same. It's not even about being the cheapest. If your property is banging and better than everyone in your area, then you should be charging higher than theirs. But once you've got your base rate, then there are multiple factors that are going to play into that base rate to adjust it up and down. So number one, the size of the group. So if you have a property that sleeps 6 people, your base rate should be competitive against other properties that sleep 6. But what if a family of 4 stumbles across your property and types in the search results and they get a price for 6 people? It's going to be too expensive. So it's a good idea to reduce your rates for smaller groups within reason. Don't be going and trying to compete with a tiny guest house room for one person if you have a big property. That's not going to work. Next up, I hope is obvious, is that your prices at the weekend should be higher than during the week. Now, your weekend prices can be anything from 50 to 100% more than during the week. It depends on the demand in your area and what happens at the weekend where you are. But one thing to think about is, once you're live, if your calendar's filling up in the weekends months in advance, then you need to increase those weekend rates. Likewise, if you've got big gaps, every day during the week is sitting empty, well then your base rate for the weekday is too high. It needs to come down. Next up is seasonality. The demand for your property will likely vary across the year. So it's important to know that, to be aware of it and to plan for it. So to have higher rates in the high season, whether that's summer or winter, and to have lower rates in the low season. And you need to have those set way in advance because people plan ahead. Next thing to think about your rates is the length of stay. So it's a good idea that if someone is coming for a longer time, that you offer a discount on that to appear more attractive to them. Having shorter stays and lots of them is not very profitable. Encouraging longer stays increases your profit, and it's a good idea to just discount a bit for the guests so you can encourage those. Add to that, 1 and 2 night stays are notoriously risky when it comes to like parties and stag do's, whereas longer stays, you could be encouraging more corporate and contractor bookings. And then just in general, throughout the year, there's going to be periods of high demand. Taylor Swift's coming, or there's a big conference on. You need to be ready to put those prices up for those dates. And like everything in this fundamental, it's really important that you try and leverage that out. Get someone or something else to make all these changes with your rates. I would always recommend using a rate pricing software, something like Price Labs, and I would also always recommend do not use Airbnb Smart Pricing. Next up, let's talk about policies. And again, on booking.com, you can get much more flexibility compared to Airbnb, but it's a good idea, I think, to have at least 2 policies. One is flexible, which offers free cancellation up until, well, whatever you want, 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. But the other is a non-refundable rate, which you're offering at probably around 10% cheaper than the flexible one. All right, next up, we need to talk about guest communication. And it's a good idea to try and automate as much of this as possible. So when a booking comes in, you can send an automated message that has tons of information the guest needs to know but haven't even thought about asking yet. Check-in, check-out times, the address of the property, cancellation policy, the check-in procedure, how do they even get in? Now, chances are they won't even read this email and they'll just come ask you all those questions anyway. So as a backup, it's good to have templates saved on your phone or on your app of when someone asks what's the check-in procedure, you can just copy and paste it instead of having to write out the entire thing every time. So for communication, you can automate a lot of this. You can hire a virtual assistant on Upwork or Fiverr to do the communication for you. Or if you really plan to scale, you can actually employ someone locally who's going to sit on the computer and know what they're doing, know your property inside out. And that's the best way that if you're planning to grow, that's what you should do. Okay, next up, we're on Fundamental 5 and I'm losing my voice. Fundamental 5 is protection. Now, when I mention protection, you're going to fall into one of 2 camps. You're either going to be like,
What do you mean protect? Why have you done a whole fundamental on protection? What's the problem? Like, everyone on Airbnb is lovely.
Or you're going to be scared and have heard all the horror stories about places being trashed and parties, and you've been dying to get to this fundamental. In reality, there are a lot of horrible guests that use Airbnb and Booking.com and everywhere else. The horror stories are not stories, they're not fairy tales, they're real, and these guests are coming for your property. So what types of bad guests can we expect? The first one, and the most popular, most well known, is partiers. These are the alpha of bad guests, and they cause havoc in all sorts of ways. First off, obviously, they come and have a big party in your place. They give no care to your place. They'll leave a trail of destruction, broken glass, smashed windows. They'll do drugs. It's just a horrible place to be. And like walking into your property the morning after one of these parties just makes you feel sick to your stomach. And the consequence of these parties is very costly. First of all, obviously, you're going to have to replace everything that they broke. And on top of that, you're going to have a serious cleaning bill coming your way. The time's going to at least double. Like, you're going to be mopping that floor at least a dozen times before it stops being sticky. And there are more indirect costs of having these parties as well. Your neighbours are going to absolutely hate you. Everyone who has an Airbnb property next to them is worried about parties. And as soon as it happens once, they're going to be convinced that this is going to happen every week. The next set of bad guests don't get the headlines like the partiers get, but they're just as bad for your business. And it's escorts. It's men and women who travel around the world booking Airbnbs to conduct their business like they're on a tour. And the consequence of hosting these escorts is pretty bad as well. Again, expect some very unhappy cleaners, and you're also going to have further reputational damage from your neighbours. I mean, who wants to live next to a pop-up brothel? The next set of bad guests are those who book with stolen credit cards. Now, this isn't really a case on Airbnb, but if you're on the other booking sites and you take payments yourself, chances are you're going to get those card details and charge them. There are lots of people who book, pay, stay, and are away before you notice that the card details that they've given you are stolen or fraudulent. So that means months down the line, you get a notification of a chargeback when the genuine card holder has queried with their bank and said, I never stayed in this place, and that money comes straight out of your account and goes back to the card holder. The next set of bad guests is policy breakers. These are the guests who bring pets to a no pets property. They bring 6 people but only pay for 2 people. They have a completely entitled mindset of,
I can do whatever I want here.
Horrible guests. They want to check in early. They don't check out at the checkout time, so your cleaner arrives and they're just still in bed. It's really frustrating. It wastes time, it wastes energy. They're just not nice guests. And next up is the refund seekers. These are people who come to your property and before they've even arrived, they've decided that they're going to be looking for things that they can complain about to get a refund. And as I mentioned before, when a guest raises anything to Airbnb will always side with them and offer that refund. And you get the guest messaging like complete blackmail, like, if you don't give me this refund, I'm going to leave a really bad review for you. It's horrible. There's just so many bad, horrible guests out there. So you need to be streetwise, you need to protect your property, and you need to keep those people out. So how do you spot them? Well, once you've got started, you're going to start to see those red flags, things that just mean you need to take another wee look at that booking before you decide whether to accept it or not. So for example, with partiers, one of the biggest things that you can catch people on is if they live very local to your property. You have to ask yourself, why do you need an apartment a mile down the road from your house? Shorter stays will attract partiers as well, especially at the weekends. If a booking comes in for 6 or 10 or however many, but it's all adults, it's another red flag. It needs a wee bit more investigation. But there are ways to spot and stop these bad guests. And it's about putting strong vetting procedures and having very strong house rules. One way of doing this is having a longer minimum stay. So if you take one night, you're definitely going to get hit with a party at some stage. But if you have a minimum of 3 or 4 nights, the chances are that party's not going to go for that long. You can have minimum age limits of 21 or 25, so that you're going to stop those really bad. The young ones really are the worst. Now, that's not to say there are older people who are going to have a party, and that's not also to say there are plenty of young people who won't party. It's a blunt instrument, but it helps you to sort of weed out a lot of the bad ones. House rules that guests read and sign and agree to are very strong, so you can tell them, look, if you do this, you're going to get charged this. You're not allowed these people in. These are the quiet hours. Everything that you want to put in there, you should put in. Make sure the guest reads it and agrees to it. And often when they see how stringent these are, if they are planning to come and have a party, the chances are they might just cancel before they even arrive. And last up, you can take security deposits from guests to protect yourself. And often the person who's made the booking, who you take the deposit from, is going to actually police the other people in their group. You can put CCTV in the form of a Ring doorbell at the door. Do not put anything in the properties at all. But by having something at the door, you're going to see who's coming in, how many people there are, what age are they, how they're acting. You can also get noise monitors that sit on the ceiling, a bit like a smoke alarm, and they monitor the noise. They don't record anything, so they don't know what people are saying. It just records the level of noise. And that links up to your phone, so you get notifications if people are being too loud. Now, if you're still here, good for you, because I'm barely here. I want to talk about some of the values and the mindset that you need to succeed in this business. The first thing you need is grit. Once you get started in this business, all the initial excitement is going to very quickly wear off, and you're going to be hit with a realization, and you're going to question if this is all worth it. But like Rocky says, it's not about how hard you hit, but it's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. So you got to roll with the punches, learn from the mistakes that you're going to make, and just keep trying to improve. I've developed grit through taking on wrong bookings, taking the wrong properties on, employing the wrong staff, COVID, the list goes on. Each time you make a mistake, it feels like a punch in the face, but each time your skin gets a little thicker. Next up is innovation. Be willing to do things differently. When you're doing your research on an area and you're looking at your competitors, don't just go and do a property that looks exactly the same as the others. Stand out, push the boundaries, do things different. Next up is have a mindset of constant improvement. Always look to get 1% better every day. Your systems could always be refined, your communication could always be made more effective, and your reviews can always get better. Now, if you've made it to the end, I am impressed. And actually, if you have made it to the end, comment "end" so that I know that you've watched this whole thing. I hope this has been helpful. My voice is completely gone. My brain is operating at like 5% capacity. But I've enjoyed this. I hope it's been useful, and I'll see you in the next one.